Your income has a ceiling, and the ceiling is your own hours. Most people build their money on labor, then wonder why it never grows past what they can personally do. The wealthy build on something different. 5 assets that keep producing after the effort stops. 2 of them need no one's permission to start. 1 is the centerpiece every fortune runs through, and 2 more multiply the rest. You don't need to be smarter than you already are. You need to stop trading hours for dollars and start building the 5 assets that fix 95% of wealth problems. Labor has a ceiling. Labor has a hard ceiling. The hour you spend is gone, and it pays once. This is the trap most income sits inside, and it's the reason a raise, no matter how large, rarely changes the underlying structure of your financial life. The 5 protocols ahead aren't 5 tactics. They're 5 places where effort gets replaced by an asset that compounds, and the axis that organizes all of them is simple once you see it. Some levers need someone else to say yes before they work. Others need only your own execution. The permissioned ones carry a higher ceiling and a higher activation cost. The permissionless ones you can start tonight with no one's approval, and they're where this list begins. 1. Code leverage. The permissionless ones come first, and the first of those is code. A program executes once, then serves the next 10,000 users at no extra cost to you. Once the system is built, the marginal cost of every additional user falls to almost zero, which is the structural reason software businesses scale faster than any service business ever could. This is the lever that needs no one's permission. You don't need an investor, a boss, or a hire to deploy it, and that asymmetry is why it's become the scaling layer of the modern economy. The investor and writer Naval Ravikant names code as one of only 2 forms of permissionless leverage, alongside media, because both keep working after you stop, and neither asks anyone for approval. Here is where 2026 changes the picture. The same leverage that once required an engineering team now sits behind a single prompt, and an individual can deploy a working automation without one. Agents, scripts, and no-code pipelines have collapsed the activation cost of code leverage from a team effort to a single person. The asset class hasn't changed, the access to it has. The implementation is direct. Identify one repetitive task you perform every week and replace it with a single automation this month. You are not building a product, you are converting labor into an asset, and the first one you ship teaches you the mechanic that every automation you build afterward will reuse. There is a reason this list starts here. Code leverage is the only one of the 5 that the highest ceiling protocol, the one at the end, cannot be built without. For now, treat it as the foundation layer underneath everything that follows. 2. Content leverage. Code is not the only permissionless lever. Content is the second, and it's the one most people quit before it activates. A video, a post, a podcast, or a document explains something once and gets consumed thousands of times over years. Like code, it scales at 0 marginal cost per additional viewer, which is why a single recorded explanation can out-earn a year of one-on-one consulting once it compounds. Here is the structural distinction that decides whether it pays. Content is permissionless to create, but permissioned to monetize, because people have to choose to listen, and you can't force that choice. You can rent attention with ads, but rented attention expires as soon as the ad spend does. Owned attention, the kind a real audience gives you, compounds instead. Here is the counterintuitive part, the one that almost no one talks about. The content curve is flat for a long time before it goes steep, and the flat part is where most creators quit. This is a patience problem dressed up as a talent problem, and the people who win are not the most talented. They are the ones who shipped long enough for compounding to activate. Notice what compounds here. It is not the views. Views are a lagging indicator. The asset that compounds is trust, because every piece of content is a deposit into an account that pays out later in people's willingness to act on your word. The discipline here is unforgiving but simple. Pick one format, one topic, and one cadence, and ship it weekly for a year before you judge whether the lever is working. This script is itself an instance of content leverage, written once and heard by people who were never in the room. And yours doesn't have to be a video. It has to be a system that records once and pays repeatedly. 3. Capital leverage. The next lever is capital leverage, the one every documented fortune depends on, and the first that asks permission. Capital deploys money to buy more money-producing assets instead of spending it on lifestyle. The gate is permission. Someone has to give you the capital, or you have to earn it and choose not to spend it, and that requirement is the activation cost that makes the ceiling higher than the two levers before it. The forms are wider than you assume. Debt, equity, customer prepayments, securities-backed credit lines, and ownership stakes are all versions of the same lever, and each one buys an asset that produces more money than it costs to hold. The researched playbook is consistent across founders and investors. Use pre-sales and customer deposits to fund production before the cost is incurred. Negotiate payment terms so growth creates more cash than it consumes. And treat annual prepayments to extend runway without giving up equity. Wealth managers use securities-backed credit lines to let clients borrow against a portfolio instead of selling it, which preserves market exposure while funding liquidity needs. The discipline gate is the metric investors watch. A burn multiple below 1 is considered efficient. Between 1 and 2.5 is acceptable to risky. Above 2.5 is generally unsustainable. Capital leverage is not free money. It is a multiplier that works only when the asset it buys returns more than the capital cost to deploy, and it ruins you symmetrically when that condition fails. The risk is real and symmetric. Leverage amplifies in both directions, and the researched record is full of margin calls, liquidations, and pro-cyclical deleveraging where forced selling makes the crash worse. The protocol is not to avoid capital leverage. It is to use it only on assets with a defined return and a defined exit, and to keep the leverage ratio inside a buffer you have stress tested. For most people, the first capital lever is not debt. It is refusing to spend the surplus and deploying that surplus into one asset that produces cash instead of one that loses value. Earn it, keep it, deploy it, and repeat that loop until the asset's output covers a cost you used to cover with labor, because that is the moment your financial structure changes, and it arrives earlier than you've been told. 4. Audience leverage capital alone sits idle without distribution. The lever that turns it into income comes next. Audience leverage is an owned list of people who already listen to you, and you can address them repeatedly without paying a toll each time. A great product with no audience is a tree falling in an empty forest, while a decent product with a real audience still sells, and that gap is why distribution beats product in the early years of almost every business. The structural distinction matters here. Building an audience is permissionless. Monetizing one is not, because genuine attention can't be bought, only rented, and rented attention stops the moment you stop paying for it. What you own is the relationship, and the relationship is the only form of attention that compounds. Here is the part that flips the obvious move. Most people chase audience size, but the lever is not size, it is trust density. A small audience that acts on your word will outperform a massive one that scrolls past your name, and the gap between those two outcomes is not close. Size is a vanity number. Trust density is the multiplier that makes every other lever in this list pay. The documented pattern is consistent across the founders who have built portfolios instead of single businesses. Audience plus offers compounds into portfolio value, because the audience is the asset that lets one offer fund the next without paying to reach the market each time. Build the list before you need it. Capture an email on every piece of content, and treat one owned channel as worth more than 5 rented ones. There is one lever left, and it cannot be built without the 4 you have already seen, which is exactly why it sits at the end of this list. It's the one with the highest ceiling, and the only one you can't build alone. 5. Collaboration leverage. Every leveraged business eventually hits a solo ceiling, and the last protocol is the only one that breaks through it. Collaboration leverage is the people lever, the oldest and highest form that exists, and its asset is other people's time, talent, credibility, and audiences combined into one relationship. What it unlocks sits higher than any individual can reach alone. This is the only fully permissioned lever in the list, because it requires trust, alignment, and a real reason for someone else to say yes. It's also the only lever that compounds the other 4, since a single partner can bring capital, code, content, and audience in one relationship instead of 4. That is why it caps the list, and that is the open loop from the first protocol resolved. The highest ceiling lever needs code, content, capital, and audience as preconditions, because collaboration without those four is just a meeting. The researched scaling literature is consistent on one point. People leverage amplifies every other lever when deployed well, and ruins every one of them when deployed badly, which is why a bad collaboration costs more than no collaboration at all. Hire slow and partner slower, because the cost of unwinding a wrong hire or a wrong partner is always higher than the cost of waiting. The implementation is narrow on purpose. Identify the one capability you are weakest at, find one person who is world-class at it and structurally aligned with you, and start with one project rather than a partnership. Collaboration is not a feeling, it is a structure, and the structure is what decides whether the highest ceiling in this list opens for you or closes. Closing the 5 protocols are one system, not 5 tactics, ordered from permissionless to permissioned, where each one becomes a precondition for the one after it. Ship one instance of the first lever this week. If this changed how you think, subscribe. I break down these frameworks every week, distilled into tools you can actually use.